just to make sure you're in the right place, we're going to talk about retirement in France. And it's 7 surprising reasons. So it may not be the most common things you've heard, but hopefully you'll learn something new. All right, so here's our agenda this evening. First, we're going to do a little housekeeping. I need to do my own housekeeping. Obviously, I'm having some tech issues. Second, we'll go through the list of 7 kind of surprising reasons to retire in France as an American. Some of these are applicable for non-Americans too, but that's kind of my focus. And then I'm going to tell you about a couple of things that are coming soon that I'm very excited about. One of them I've done before, but it's going to be revamped, and there's something new coming that's I've never done before, but I think you're going to love it. I'm very excited about it. And then at the end we'll have a Q&A, just an open Q&A, talk about the stuff that we have discussed tonight. If there's some other question that has been bugging you, you can ask me. I may not be able to answer it tonight, but I will do my best. So, housekeeping. As I mentioned, please keep your mics muted while we're on the session. There's just too many people. We already have almost 150, and we may get a couple of hundred people on eventually. It's just too many to talk freely. Try to minimize distractions. I'm going to go through, once we get into the list content, I'm going to go through it fairly quickly. So try to pay attention. I'm recording this, and I will send it out to all of you, so don't worry. But try to pay attention, because if you put in the chat, like, well, what did he just say? Or can you go back to that slide? It's really not fair for everybody who is paying attention for me to go back. Again, I will answer questions at the end if there's something that I skipped over too fast or you want clarification on. So, and then, as I just mentioned, use the chat for the questions. Let me see if my overlay is going to work here. And you see the chat right down here. Click on that button. It should open up a box like this. And this is where you can type your message. Just make sure it is for everyone, so that other people can see your questions, because sometimes we learn a lot from the questions other people ask on these presentations. All right, I'm just checking the chat, make sure everything is still good to go. Excellent. All right, are you guys ready to get started? If you're ready, I want you to put a thumbs up emoji in the chat. Thank you, Elizabeth. There we go. Yes, this is interactive presentation. All right, let's get to our first reason why you might want to retire in France. Did you know that France has more doctors per capita than the United States? It's important, obviously. You're getting older, thinking about retirement. There's nothing more important than healthcare as you get older. You probably already know that France has an outstanding healthcare system. After you are a resident there for 90 days, you can apply to be part of the national healthcare system. And a lot of people have this I don't want to say it's a misconception, because it's true in some places, but they have this idea that any kind of universal health care or socialized medicine automatically means like really long wait times to see a doctor. And that's simply not true. The wait times in France, for the most part, are about the same, sometimes better than what they are in the United States. Now, just like any healthcare system, specialists tend to be fewer than generalists, so sometimes it can be harder to get a appointment with them. But overall, there are more doctors to see you if you move to France. And with that, let me share a quick website that you may have heard of or maybe not. Are you familiar with Doctolib? This is a website in France where you can search for local doctors. For example, if I wanted to look in the city of Limoges, Oh, sorry. That's what I want. Limoges here. Then I can search and see a list of all the doctors there. And you can see this is general medicine. You can click into this to read more about the doctor, where they went to school, what kind of specialties they have. And in some of these, it'll actually list prices for various medical things. So doctolib.fr is a great website. Again, I'll be sharing all of these links, website links, in the with the replay when I send it out. So don't worry about trying to catch all of this. All right. So number one, more doctors than the United States. Number two, visa approval in less than 2 weeks, typically. Now, this is from me talking to people who've recently gone through the process. And of course, it takes a lot longer than that to prepare for the move. I would say you should probably plan on at least a year, maybe 2 years for like from the move date, just because there's a lot of planning, financial planning, the actual logistics, selling stuff. What are you going to do with your house? What are you going to do with your stuff? There's a lot of things, but when it comes time to actually apply for the visa, most of the people I've talked to recently, they submit their information and they have their physical visa in their hand, in the passport, back in less than 2 weeks, often in a week, like less than 7 days. This is the retirement visa, Laura. So the VLSTS, which is not technically a retirement visa, but that's what is the most common for retirees. Now, it does take some time to get the paperwork together. So you would want to, start the application process early. And to do that, if you go to the French Visa Wizard, which is located at france-visas.gouv.fr, this is like the official visa website. You sign up, create an account, actually fill out your visa online. It'll tell you all the documentation you need to provide. It's got a list of places to take it. And I'll just tell you up front, just because I know people wonder about this. You can 100% do a visa application on your own. I'm not going to say it's like super, like the easiest thing possible, but I would warn you against paying someone, certainly not thousands of dollars, even hundreds of dollars. Now, if you're completely like freaking out and scared, there's nothing wrong with getting professional help. But what I don't want is people just assuming, oh, well, I have to hire like an international attorney or, some expensive consultant to do this for me. I know dozens of people like in the last year who've done this totally on their own. Again, submitted the paperwork, visas. I haven't heard of a single person who's gotten their visa rejected. I know it does happen, but again, you can do this on your own. I don't know how many of you follow Baguette Bound on YouTube or are familiar with Jason and Raina. They are a great resource if you
Yeah.
if you do need help with visas. They're a great resource because they have some packages that are relatively inexpensive to help shepherd you through the process or answer your questions. All right, number three. Everybody knows about the trains in France, but hopefully you also know about the super like ultra cheap flights that are available in Europe. I was looking earlier, and let me pull this up. SNCF, that's SNCF, that is the French National Railway. And they actually have these cards you can buy. They're like discount cards. This one is specifically for seniors. So if you're 60 or older, you basically buy this card. I think it's 49 euros for a year, and it'll immediately get you 30% discount on almost all trains, including the TGV high speed. It also, I know, will give like a 60% discount for any kids between the age of 4 and 11 who you buy with the same ticket. So if you ever have any like grandkids that want to come visit you in France once you move there, great way to get discounts. The second thing I'll show you, this is just from Google Flights, is I just looked up a flight from Paris to Dublin, Ireland, nonstop, round trip is $40 through Ryanair. $40. So like less than the cost of a two-person dinner in the United States for sure. You could fly to and from Dublin to Paris. That just blows my mind. You can go on Google Flights and search other places, but that's one of the beautiful things. Ryanair, there's a airline called EasyJet, which is also a discount airline in Europe. It's not unusual to be able to fly from, say, Bordeaux to Rome for maybe $150 round trip. It's incredible. Mars says two people at McDonald's. It's getting there, but it's not quite there yet. So these cheap flights and trains, this is, if you're like me, France has a place in your mind. And I always think trains, like I want to be able to get from where I am to somewhere else without having to, drive on an interstate, pay for gas, own a car. It's possible in France to live car free. We'll talk about that a little more in a bit. All right, number 4. This is huge. I mentioned, obviously healthcare is amazing in France, one of the best systems in the world, highly subsidized. So once you get on the national healthcare plan, after 90 days, you can apply. Once you get on it, by default, 70% of all medical costs are covered. The majority of people will buy what's called a mutuelle, which is just an insurance. It's like a top-up insurance policy. Depending on your age, it's all based on age. A couple in their 60s probably will pay a couple €1,000 a year for it. But with the top-off policy, virtually everything is covered. And again, as an American, this always is crazy to me. That includes, medications, going to the doctor, MRIs, surgeries, everything. It also includes dental work. It includes glasses. The stuff that's covered is mind blowing. I can't imagine how many thousands of dollars this saves people overall. Now, it is paid for through taxes. It's a large budget item, but the French have decided that healthcare is a human right. Everybody deserves it, and everybody deserves high quality. Now, one thing that you may not know as an American is currently, if you're on a pension, which is Social Security, you're taking IRA distributions, you're taking 401k distributions, 403 distributions, taking money out of a retirement account, you're considered a pensioner in France. And currently, pensioners are exempt from paying into the system. Normally, there's a charge. It's not technically a tax. It's a healthcare charge for people who are living in France and who have a large passive income, but who have not worked in France, so they haven't contributed their healthcare contributions. Normally, you pay 6.5% above a threshold, which I'll share with you in a second. But currently, and again, I've checked this with my retired friends who are in France, they don't get a bill. They do not get this CSM charge currently. It's a huge deal. Yeah, Mia, I do worry like longer term about it being sustainable, but this isn't just for Americans. That they also do this with people from the UK. There's like an S1 healthcare, like reciprocity, and other countries in Europe too. Now, the reason I said currently talking about this exemption is if it changes and you do have to pay, some people think, oh my gosh, they're gonna charge me $20,000 a year to access healthcare, and that is not the case. I mean, it depends on how much money you make, I guess. But I want to show you. I created a little calculator that allows you to figure out what your potential payment would be. So, say next year, 2 years, 5 years from now, the French government's like, we got some budget issues. Those darn Americans, we're gonna start charging them this. Like, even if they're a pensioner, we're gonna charge them. I made this little calculator that you can use, and what you do is you first select whether it's a single. Again, I made it very simple. It's for a single person or a couple. Then you put in your estimated passive income. Again, I don't break it out into Social Security versus dividends and all that kind of stuff. To them, it's all the same. What the calculator does is it then converts the dollars into euros. And then, based on the calculation that France uses for the CSM, it will give you an estimate. So, for example, if a single person has 60,000 US dollars of passive income, 60,000 US is the same as 51,000 euros. If they were not exempt and they were billed the amount to access healthcare, this one person would have to pay $1,800 per year to access the system. Now, here's where it gets even better. So there's like a threshold after which you have to pass, and it's only above that amount that they charge the charge on. If you're a couple, they allow that amount for both people. So watch when I switch it to a couple. It's currently 1,800. When I switch it to a couple would only pay 283 euros per year to access the healthcare system. That's pretty amazing. Now, as I said, it depends on your income. Say you are a couple and you have 200,000 of passive income, which again, way more than you need to live in the majority of France for sure. Then you would pay 8,000 per year. Again, if you're not exempt. Currently, if this couple making 200,000, if part of that 200,000 is Social Security, or they're taking distributions from an IRA or a Roth or a 401k, they're exempt. They do not pay this 8,000. Yes, Alan, I do. This does it uses like today's Google Finance currency exchange. So if you use it a month from now, this amount will be different depending on how the currency is changed. All right. I'm getting winded because I've been talking so much. So what we're going to do, I'm going to take a quick pause. Of the 4 things we've talked about so far, in the chat, give me any questions you got, and we'll try to knock some of them out right now. Flory asks, can you define passive income? Non-earned income. So not from working, not W-2 income. So it could be dividends, it could be rental income, again, distributions from, an annuity, retirement accounts, company pension, that kind of stuff. All right, I apologize. I'm going to have to scroll back up because a bunch of questions came in. So let me go back. And again, at the end, we're going to have an open Q&A. Let's see. That Passive income, I believe, is gross passive income, Len, but I honestly I'm not sure like how like what deductions there could be from that. Yes, Basim, that is per year, not per month. Brian says so about 4%. The way, I mean, basically the way the calculation works is you get you get about 23 to $24,000 of allowance. So that first 23 or 24,000 that nobody gets charged on. It's like the first bracket that's zero rate. But then above that, it's 6.5% on the amount above that. Kenneth is asking about Medicare, and this is a good question. Um, do you stop Medicare? Like if you're going to move to France, would you stop Medicare? It depends. Moving to France does not have to be a permanent thing. You could go for a year and decide you don't like it. If you know 100%, like I know that this is it. I know this is where I want to move. I want to become a resident. I'm going to live there. Then I think it's fine to not enroll in Medicare. Just remember, if years from now you decide, I made a mistake, I want to go back to the United States. If you need to then enroll in Medicare, there will be a permanent penalty. It'll be much more expensive. Well, I say much. It'll be a good bit more expensive permanently. Like you'll sign up at a higher rate and it'll stay that way. So depending on what your expenses are, I'm a financial planner. If we need to, let's put the expense of keeping your Medicare payment, Medicare Part A and Part B. Part A is hospital coverage, which is actually technically free, but Part B is where you get a monthly premium. Put that into your financial plan and see what it looks like with and without it. The retirement visa, the VLSTS visa is good for 1 year. But then when you renew that visa, you can renew for a multi-year carte de séjour, residence card. Just know that with the new regulations, if you go to renew for a multi-year residence card, you do have to now pass a language test, or you will in 2026. But you should all be working on your French already. All right, I'm just going to take a couple more, and then we're going to move on. And again, we'll have more Q&A at the end. Philip's asking, what assets do you need to show for the long-term visa, and what type of asset classes? Show them everything you got. Show them your money in your bank. France, I didn't put this in the slides, but France, relative compared to, say, Italy for sure, Spain and Portugal probably, is so much easier on the visa side. So they have a minimum income requirement, which I think is it's like 1,400 or 1,600 euros per person per month. And so if possible, you want to show them like, hey, look, here's my social security payments. Here's like the distributions I get every month from my 401k. Show all that stuff. But then France says, oh, well, if that's not enough, just show us the same equivalent amount in a bank. Like you could just show them $25,000 or $30,000 in a bank. And they'd be like, you're good. It's really amazing. All right, last question. Maury, if you're still working, number one, you probably would not come on the VLSTS visa. I mean, there's like a debate. There's kind of a debate about whether someone who's working remotely, like all your money and your clients are in the United States and you're in France, you're technically not supposed to be working on the VLSTS. And the issue would be when you go to file your taxes and you give them all your tax documentation, they're going to be like, wait a minute, you're on the VLSTS. Why do you have this W-2 income? Um, so you probably want to look at possibly a different visa. We're going to have a session on that, a complete session on that at some point. All right, I'll tell you what. We'll come back to these questions because they're rolling in. Let's keep moving, and then we'll have a little extra time at the end. All right. All right. Number 5, another great one. I mentioned that trains are important, but car-free living. And there are cars obviously in France. France has the most roundabouts of any country in the world. Um, there are places in France where you absolutely will need a car, but I think the last count I saw was there are just over 2,500 train connected towns across France. Now, some of them maybe 2 trains or 3 trains a day come and go, but there are a lot of towns where you can get to Paris quickly, you can get to Nice quickly, you can get to the south quickly, you can get all over the place. And it is absolutely possible to find locations where you can live car free. Now, you always have the option you could rent a car. If one weekend you're like, hey, I want to go out in the country and there's not a train that takes me there, there's car sharing services, there's rentals, all that stuff is still possible. And before this presentation, I did a search. Here are 20 train connected walkable cities. I'll leave this up in case you want to take a screenshot. Again, I will send this stuff out in the replay, so don't stress about it. But these are places that you should absolutely look into if you haven't decided yet. It's not Paris is not on here because Paris obviously has trains and metros and regionals and all that stuff. Lyon is not on here. Marseille is not on here. This is not the big cities. These are the smaller cities, regional cities. They're more affordable. Real estate is cheaper. They're typically more authentic. I'm not saying these aren't like tourist spots, but these might be more like French tourists. I mean, other French people will come to these places. Anyway, there's more than this, but I just thought I'd give you a good little starting list if you want to start looking for possible places. And I didn't put this in the presentation, but some of you know because you've been on the newsletter list for a while. Next year, I'm going to start my first retirement retreats in France, where it's going to be me and like, I don't know, 12, 15 people. And you're going to travel with me to France. We're going to go visit some of these amazing little towns, and we're going to do fun stuff and live like locals. We're going to go to the grocery store. We're going to see what kind of fun stuff there is to do in town. We might go by town hall and talk to some of the government people. We're certainly going to talk to some local expats who live there and hear their stories. Anyway, it's going to be amazing. Details to come. All right, let's keep moving. Number 6, healthier food and the weekly markets. Everyone knows that weekly markets are like a thing in France. And I think most people know that food in Europe generally is much healthier than in the United States. There's a list of, I don't know, dozens of additives, food additives, and colors and preservatives that are banned in the EU. I know I've heard from a lot of people who you go spend like 2 weeks in France or other parts of Europe and you lose like 5 pounds. Now, part of that is these places typically are more walkable. You're walking more anyway. You're staying more active. But part of it has to be it's healthier food. The food is closer to the source. You're not getting stuff that's shipped, halfway across the world. Let me show you. I just, again, was researching this before we came on. and you can search this for like any town or city. Try to look up on the town hall website. They'll typically will list the market days. But I just found this for Normandy. This market in, I assume it's called Dieppe. This market was rated in 2020. It was rated the best market in France. It says it has over 200 stalls, and of course, it's not just foods, but also probably handmade goods and clothes and candles and other things. But you can see like Rouen has over a dozen markets, Tuesdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. So this is a big, important part of living in France. Not only is it healthier, it typically is cheaper, obviously fresher, but this is also a social thing where you go see your neighbors, you get to know the vendors, they get to understand what you like or what you're looking for. You get to practice your language skills. It's just a cultural strength of France to access these markets. Yep. Elizabeth's saying the Les Halles, which is like, um, it's like a covered market. A lot of cities or towns will have where even if the weather's not great, they'll still have market days. Sometimes a market, I mean, sometimes it's open like every day, but they'll have like a covered building where vendors can come and set up. It's like an indoor market. All right. Number 7, drum roll, please. France is surprisingly affordable. A lot of people now, that being said, Paris is expensive. There's just no two ways about it. If you want to be like in the center of Paris, I mean, Paris is literally the number one visited city in the world. If you want to live in the center of Paris, it's going to cost you. I'm not saying don't do it. Just don't think it's going to be super affordable compared to where you live now. Now, if you live in New York or LA or Toronto or somewhere like that, maybe Paris will seem cheap. But overall, again, in these more regional areas, and I'm not talking about like living in the backwoods, just smaller towns, smaller villages that still have amenities, it can be 30 to 50% less expensive. I think one conversation I had with Jason and Raina from Baguette Bound, I'm pretty sure she told me they think their expenses are about 50% of what it was living in Houston, which is amazing because they certainly seem to have a very high quality of life to me. And also to prove this, this is a website called livingcost.org. And this is just a cost of living by country, most expensive to least. This is 197 countries. So I'll just scroll down. You can see here, United States is number 10. And that cost, I'm not sure exactly how they get this, if this is like supposed to be an average across the entire country, but they say $2,504 per month for a single person to live. Maybe that's the minimum. But if I scroll down, here we go. France, which is $1,739 per month. And it just so happens that $1,739 is a third less expensive than $2,504. But like I said, if you currently live in New York and you're going to move to, I don't know, the Lot department in southwest France, we're talking like 50%, maybe more than 50% less. It's absolutely possible. The other thing I'll suggest too, let me get my fat face out of the way, is this website, which is from Milieu et Gens, and it's got this cool map that you can see over here on the right. And if I scroll in, this is, I should tell you what it is first. This is a price map of properties across France. And you can see, like, just big picture, the center of France, the northeast corner are relatively inexpensive. Now, these also are the least populated areas. So, again, if you're an outdoorsy person, you don't mind being in a little rural area, maybe you want to buy some land, these would be great places. It's going to be very affordable. But what you can do with this map is, let me just, I'm going to scroll down here. If I click into the region here, come on, internet. There we go. Now it's breaking it into individual departments. And then if I scroll in some more, it suddenly is going to start dividing it into individual like prefectures or towns. So for example, you can see Bordeaux, between Bordeaux and the coast, pretty expensive. So this would be down here, would be like Arcachon, the Dune de Pilat, that area. As you go across, you can see like an expensive little spot right here. Let me zoom in a little bit more for you. This little expensive spot right here is probably like Saint-Emilion, a very expensive, like very high quality wine region. But if we scroll across, you'll see Sarlat. I don't know if you've ever been to Sarlat, but absolutely amazing. Very touristy though. That's why it's more expensive to live around there. The Baguette Bound crew actually live in Dordogne, and I think they're somewhere down in this area. Anyway, I like this map because again, you can scroll in and get closer and closer. There we go. We can start seeing some town names. And again, this will tell you kind of what the average costs are to buy and also to rent. Great tool. Yes, they're in AMA. I was just trying to find it on the map. Now, like I mentioned before, an important thing with the expenses is you don't necessarily need like 10 years in advance, but I would say within a year or two of making this move, it's a really good idea for you to double check, make sure your Social Security, your investment accounts, any company pensions you get. Maybe are you going to keep your house in the United States and rent it out? Are you going to sell it and use the proceeds to buy a new house? Are you going to sell it and use the proceeds to rent for the next 10 years? You should definitely put together a fairly robust financial plan. And that brings me to one thing that's coming soon. And that is the Retire to France boot camp. Now, I know there's people on this call, because I've seen them already, who have attended one of my boot camps. I've revamped it a little bit, but I'll just say it's a lot of fun for me, and I think it's pretty eye-opening for people who have taken it. Because what we do is we not only do we build a retirement plan together, again, take all these things to account, your Social Security, your spouse's Social Security, your company pension. We can test different scenarios. Are we selling the house? Are we keeping the house? Are we buying a house in France for cash? Are we going to finance it? Are we going to rent for a year and then maybe buy? We can test all these scenarios without having to build some crazy spreadsheet in Google Sheets or Excel. It's 6 weeks long, the boot camp. And I also have people come in, my friends and some expert friends that I know, to educate you, answer questions. The Baguette Bound crew are one of the people that come in and talk in the boot camp. They came in and did a session on visas. So it's not just me. It's not just you. While there is some energy there, because you're going to be in this group with other expats or wannabe expats just like you. Anyway, the boot camp's coming up in the next 2 months. I'll be announcing the next dates. It's a small group. I limit it to a relatively small group of people because I'm working with you one-on-one. But anyway, that's one thing that's coming soon. Another thing, and this is the thing I'm really excited about, because I've been thinking about doing this for a long time, and I'm finally pulling the trigger. It's a 5 day France masterclass. It's basically retire in France. It's 100% free, and it'll probably be a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Each day we'll have a different session, live session like this, um, where we'll talk about one of these topics in way more detail. There also, it will be a community that you'll be able to access where you can go in with other people in the masterclass, tell them where you're thinking about staying. Maybe you'll meet some people that can share information about a place you're interested in. Um, Again, I'll have some experts come in and talk. Um, I'm super excited about this. It's going to be so much great information, but over 5 days. I didn't want to do like a 90-minute or a 2 hour where I just like fire hose you with information. It's too much. This will be over several days. Um, there'll be little contests we have. There'll be homework to do. If you do the homework, you can unlock special access to some special things. It'll be great. Anyway, this again coming up probably in October of this year. But if you're on the newsletter list, you'll get notified. So that'll be coming soon. And with that, let me check the chat. How are we doing on time? 7:47. Excellent. I actually didn't talk as much as I usually do. You're welcome. Um, all right, I'm gonna scroll back up in the chat. Keep putting your questions in the chat, and be patient with me because, like I said, we have 150 people in here. So let me just get back up here. And I see. Thank you for those of you who are sharing great stuff in the chat. I see Maureen talking about that she had already bought up a house in a village there. All right, let's see. All right, I was just scrolling back up to make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, that I think you guys were asking about that last website with the map. Let me see if I can get the web address for you here. Copy. I'm gonna pop it in the chat. Hopefully that works. It's milieuagent.com. Alan's asking, how's your French, Tommy? It is, I am honestly, I'm working on it. I'll show you. Here's my stack of French learning. I have a phrase book, I have vocabulary by topic, French short stories. I have a frequency dictionary, so it has words and like how often they come up in conversation, so you can learn like the most common used stuff. And then I have a grammar book. I'm working through this stuff. That's a great question too, because one of the biggest regrets I've heard from the people that I've interviewed and talked to and made friends with who've moved to France is that they did not start learning the language sooner and did not take it more seriously. That they, were using Duolingo or some app, maybe spending 5-10 minutes on it a day, maybe every other day. If you're serious about this and you want this to be more fulfilling and enjoyable, you need to, I mean, think about it like you were going to apply for a new job and you had to have a certification, but the new job was going to pay you $40,000 more. You would take that certification seriously. You need to set aside like an hour or two every day to be marinating in French. It doesn't mean you're like doing, conjugations for 2 hours, but get in the habit of when you go on a walk, listen to a podcast in French. There's tons of podcasts for free that are like slow French, where they'll just tell stories and then they'll give you a translation of the story. Start watching shows on Netflix and Amazon Prime. There's tons of shows that are in French. Read for 15 to 20 minutes in the morning and then go back and reread the same thing that evening before you go to bed. Take this very seriously. I mean, you will learn it once you get there. You'll just be forced to, but it'll make it so much easier if you just have that like 20% of common phrases, but also the ear. The ear is the most important thing. Spoken French, if you've studied it at all, spoken French is way different than written French. It does not sound at all like it looks. So you really got to put the time in. Sorry, that was a little soapbox rant. All right. Let's see. Yeah, Mia's actually recommendations for learning French. I'll put a list of these books that I have. Again, that I'm not like a French teacher, but they came highly recommended to me. Laura is asking, how do we sign up for the newsletter? If you signed up for this webinar, you should be on my newsletter list. Whoa, that brings up another good point. With this new brand, and this is a probably dumb mistake on my part. I have a new email address that's tommy@americantofrance.com. Tommy@americantofrance.com. The newsletter this past week I sent from that email address, and I guarantee you it went in a ton of people's spam because the email provider's like, who's this new email address? If you missed the newsletter this past week or this coming Saturday, you don't see it. I usually send it about 9 a.m. on Saturday mornings. Please check your spam folder and move it back to the inbox because that'll tell the email gods that you want to hear from me. All right. Carolyn is asking, do you have to renew a visa at a multi-year or can you just do it 1 year at a time? You can do 1 year at a time. And if you do it 1 year at a time, there is no language requirement currently. It's only if you do a multi-year renewal. Now, it's more of a hassle. Like if you know you're going to be there for 5 years, and you get your first year visa. I know like the Baguette Bound folks, they had their first year visa. And when they went to renew, I don't even think they asked for it. The people just gave them a 3-year renewal because they're like, oh, well, you live here, you own a house here now, you're clearly like residents. The only thing is with this new language test, if you do a multi-year carte de séjour, that's where the language requirement kicks in. Unless you're, I think, 65 or older. Could be wrong on that. Jackie's asking about the USDA health certification for pets. Again, I'm not getting into this. Maybe we'll talk about this in the masterclass. But yes, you can take your pets. France loves pets. For dogs, there's a list of banned breeds. For example, my dog I could not take because she's part pit bull. Anyway, there's banned breeds, but if your pet can go, you have to get a certification by your vet. Basically, your vet has to sign it, and it has to be validated within 10 days of you making the trip. It's one thing that I've heard is kind of a pain in the butt because the timing. If either you don't get it in time, or your flight gets delayed and pushes past like that 10-day window. But honestly, it's not that difficult. It's not that difficult a process, just the timing that can be challenging. And depending on how you want to send the pet, it can be relatively expensive. Keith is asking about for the long-term visa, do you have to show proof of accommodation or there is a requirement? Yes, but it does not, you do not have to own a property. You do not have to have a long-term lease. The majority of people I've seen recently have a 90-day Airbnb, and the French consulate accepts that. You're welcome, Richard. Thanks for coming. Yeah, Charles Hayes, who was one of my boot campers, He did a Airbnb, two month Airbnb and got the visa. Yes, Shelley's asking about the visa also. Yes, part of the documentation for the visa is proof of assets and income. So you want to show them, here's our bank statements, maybe the past 3 months. Here's like how much we have in 401ks. Here's our social security statements. You'll provide all that stuff, but you'll also provide you should provide, make it as easy as possible for them. Like a cover letter says, hey, we're looking forward to coming to France. Here's our plan. Our plan is number one, to rent this place for the first 90 days. And here's the Airbnb receipt that shows we have it booked. Here, our income will come from these sources. Social Security of this per month, 401k distributions of this per month. We also have this much money in the bank. Like, you're not just going to give them a stack of statements. You're going to give them a stack of statements, but on the top is going to be, here's what all this stuff says in plain, simple English. And it can be in English. It doesn't have to be in French. But yes, an address, like where you're staying when you first get there, has to be there. And it should be for probably 60 to 90 days. Clint is asking about the differences between moving to France and maintaining two homes along with one in the US. I'm not sure exactly what you mean. If you're in France for over 183 days and you're there on a visa, the French government is probably going to assume that you're a tax resident, like you're a default tax resident. If you do not stay in France for 183 days, and that's per calendar year, you probably are not a tax resident unless France is where your primary house is and your bank accounts and like it's your center of interest. It's not just the timing, but if you want to spend up to 6 months, not 6 months or over, but up to 6 months every year in France, you can do that and not be a tax resident. I don't know if that answered that question. Yes, Karen is talking about trusts, which again we won't get into, but if you have a trust account in the United States, France does not recognize that. Like if you put assets in a living trust or maybe a irrevocable trust. We'll do a whole session on estate planning in the future. I'm already in touch with some attorneys about that. Keith, thank you for the link to the pet travel stuff. Kevin, there is no language test if you're over 65, I believe. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but there's definitely an age after which, I mean, again, they want you to learn the language, but they're not going to have a mandatory thing. The only exception might be if you're applying for citizenship. I think there's always a language test. Charles is asking about income taxes in France. I don't want to talk about it in super detail. I'll just say this with the tax treaty. Social Security, 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs, 403bs, any retirement account, dividends, stock dividends, rental income, company pensions that are based in the United States, none of those things you pay tax on in France. You report it on your French income tax, but you only pay in the United States, which is great because United States rates are typically lower. Cost of living in France is lower too, so you can typically take out less from those accounts to cause less tax. I'll do a whole session on taxes at some point. Steven's asking about his wife is an independent author. I can't speak to it specifically. It depends on the kind of income she's getting from the book. If it's W-2 income, like 1099 income or self-employment income, I don't know. I think she would have to report it. By the way, it's 8 o'clock. I'm still recording. If you guys need to go, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to hang around and answer some more questions. So if you want to hang around, do. If not, thank you so much. We'll do this again, and I'll be sending out the recording soon. Yeah, Billy is he's saying he thought one needed full citizenship for the benefits to go through. For France, if you are a resident, which means you come on a visa and you're there for 90 days, you typically get all the same rights and privileges as a full-time citizen or resident, with the exception of voting. Obviously, if you're not a citizen, you can't vote. But healthcare, public services, all that stuff, as long as you're a resident and have been there for 90 days, again, you apply for healthcare. You just need a carte de séjour, which is a residence card. Clint is asking about the newsletter again. Clint, if you reply to the email I sent earlier reminding you about this webinar, reply back to me with her email address and I'll manually add her to the newsletter. Yep. Jorge says, join a conversational French meetup group, which is a great idea. If you live like in a city or town with a lot of population, sometimes you can find free meetup groups where just Francophiles, people who love France, they'll have groups where you can go meet at a bar or a restaurant for an hour and you just practice your French with each other. It's a great way to get out of your comfort zone too. All right, looking through for some more questions. So somebody's asking, is it true that it's better to exit the U.S. from a no income tax state? Yeah, Mitzi's saying you're considered domiciled in the last state you lived in, so state tax may apply. I'm not a CPA, so I don't know specifically about that, but just to make it clean, yes, if you knew for sure, like we're leaving this United States, we're definitely not coming back, we're selling our house on all our stuff, it could make it very clean to be like, oh yes, I moved here from a state with no income tax. Tennessee, Florida, Texas, there are several. Charles is saying if you're in France for more than a half year, you must file French taxes as a taxable resident. Yes, that is generally true. If you're there for longer than two 90-day periods, which have to have a 90-day gap in the middle, chances are you have a visa. Getting a visa for a year in France, you're basically telling France, I'm coming to become a resident. So you'd have a hard time arguing that, no, I'm actually not a resident. Victoria is saying or asking, can you apply for a visa if you are already in France? No, you cannot. If you like go to stay in France, so you're like, hey, I'm going to go spend a couple of months in France, and you don't have a visa, you go over there, you cannot apply for a visa while in France. You have to return to your country of residence and apply at the consulate there. You cannot do it. I don't think you can do it remotely either, because you have to physically show up and turn in your paperwork at one of the intake locations. So yeah, don't make that mistake of, hey, we're moving to France, we're going to sell everything and get on a plane and then go over there and be like, where do we go to get the visa thing? They're going to send you back to the United States. Clint is asking, what if you have dual citizenship, French and American? If you have dual citizenship, you do not need a visa. You can already go live in France for as long as you want. What you will need to do, though, is you just go to your local town hall, I think. You'll just need to apply for a residence card, like to get the physical card, but you will not have to fill out an actual visa application. As a citizen of France, too, that also entitles you you can live anywhere in the EU without a visa. Same thing, though, if you're a French citizen and you wanted to go live in Germany, once you get to Germany, you'd have to go apply for a residence permit in Germany. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for staying up with me. All right. We're going to wrap it up. I'll talk to you guys soon.